Hi, everybody. My name is Myles, and I'm with Peak Performers. I am so glad today to be having Ryan Mayer, who is an ADHD coach, joining me today to talk with me during this segment of my disability story about what it means to live and work with ADHD. Ryan, I'm so happy to have you on, and welcome.
So glad to be here, Myles. Always good to be with you and talk disability.
So I first met Ryan actually when I was sending out a bunch of communications following a Disability In conference. And Ryan is registered as a disability-owned small business through Disability In. So could you tell me a little bit about that particular part of your business?
I didn't even know that this existed. So I have to make sure to give credit where credit is due. My wife had gone through a training at her workplace about creating more inclusive environments. And so she just looked up online, did an internet search, and found Disability In, which helps large organizations to get access to diverse talent, very similar in some ways to what Peak Performers does. So she said that there was a program available where we could actually go through and apply to be certified. And I did and got certified as a disability owned business enterprise. And to Disability In's credit, it was very thorough. They wanted to know all kinds of things about the business. They wanted to verify and validate that I, in fact, did have a disability. And just their whole mission of trying to bridge that gap between diverse suppliers, whether it is someone with a disability, a minority, someone who just may not normally have access to some of these larger companies. And that's allowed me to start making connections in the business and corporate environments where that's actually the direction that my business is headed.
Particularly if you're a business, you need to be considering how you're buying stuff. Because if you go and buy through just the same means that you always have, you're going to get the same results that you always have. But there are some strategic ways that you can procure things more ethically, but also in ways that support small businesses, support people with disabilities, support minority owned businesses. There's any number of ways that you can procure in an effective manner that bolster the kind of values that you want to promote in this world.
One of the other benefits of it for an organization is thinking about who are your clientele? Who are the end users that you're serving? For example, if you are a hospital, what kind of folks are you getting? What demographics are coming in? And if you don't have those kind of demographics represented in your suppliers, then maybe you're missing some very valuable perspective and points of view that could add a lot more than just supplies of a product or service.
People want to see themselves reflected in your business. Your customers want to see themselves reflected, and that's one of the ways that you can do just that. Ryan, I got to tell you, you have built up an incredible online presence. And in just a second, I'm going to share a video of you that kind of helped launch your presence online.
Here are 5 signs that you might have ADHD. You lose your phone while you're literally holding it. You feel like you've always got 47 tabs open, both in your mind and on your laptop. You either hyper-focus for 6 hours straight, or you can't get started at all. Okay, time blindness is real. I thought it was only 5 minutes. Turns out 2 hours passed. Body doubling, it's real. You get more done just because someone's sitting there with you. Fascinating.
How did you manage to build a following of 400,000 people?
Yeah, so all told with the various different social media platforms, I now have over 500,000 followers, which is so mind-boggling for me and humbling to know that the words that I'm saying are valued by these audiences. But it's actually a pretty funny story, Myles, how it all came together. So in 2020, I was had my coaching practice. I had just gotten it started, and I was asking my current clients if they had anyone who they would recommend me to who might need my help with coaching. And sure enough, one of my clients who was an entrepreneur sold items on Amazon. had somebody ask him if he had anyone who could help with ADHD. So he connected me. It was a young man, 19 years old from New York City. And when I hopped onto an intro call with him, I wasn't really thinking much of it because I'm like, I wish I would have had someone who could have told me more about my ADHD when I was that age. So I'll chat with him, but he's probably not going to be able to afford my services, which is fine. I have other people I could send him to. But the conversation took a very interesting turn when he said, "I'm actually a coach too." And I said, "Oh, I didn't know that. What are you a coach for?" And he said, "Social media." And I said, "Oh, all right." And he said, "So while I can't pay for your services, I wanted to propose a trade. We could barter. You coach my ADHD and I'll coach you on social media."
Hmm.
And I said, "All right, sure. I'll be willing to give it a shot and see how it goes."
Yeah.
And he said, "What's your preferred platform?" And I said, "Well, I'm really trying to cater to a more professional audience. And I'm proud to say I've built now a network of over 12,000 connections on LinkedIn. So that I've worked really hard on that." So I said, "Yeah, LinkedIn is definitely my target market." And he said, "Well, I'm going to have to insist that we don't go to LinkedIn. Instead, we're going to go to TikTok." And I said, "Well, that's actually like the opposite of what I was thinking." And he said, "Well, that's my offer." It ended up just being perfect because it was right when COVID was happening. So everything was shutting down. People were sheltering at home. It was just such a weird time in the world. But it ended up being perfect for my business because more people were getting onto TikTok and more people were relating to ADHD specific content. So I had put out a few videos that went viral and it just really put me on the map. And I'm just so grateful that everything happened in the way it did because now I'm proud to say I've had clients from 23 different countries. So it's just insane, but it's such an honor and a privilege for me. And what it tells me is that there is a human experience that's common no matter where you're from or what your background is that unites all of us. In this case, it's specifically about ADHD, but people in different countries, different cultures, different genders, everyone can relate to these same challenges.
Now, I got to ask you, so me personally, I get onto TikTok and it immediately starts playing a video and I kind of get a little bit panicked. So, does TikTok work well with your ADHD brain, or is it something that you find distracting?
I actually suggest that people use extreme caution when working with social media, particularly TikTok. And I say that TikTok can definitely be a black hole or a very slippery slope where, to your point, you log in and what set it apart and changed the way all social media structures and programs themselves now. Videos start right away. They start adapting to your preferences immediately. I did not have the discipline because of the way that my brain is with ADHD to be able to stop the scroll. So I know a lot of people joke about, I'm using air quotes, doom scrolling, but that's a real thing. And they engineer it in that way so that it has very addictive properties. So I have found that it's best for me to create the content, give it to my very talented social media team, and allow them that, like we'll review it, I'll approve it, and then they put it out there for me. So I'm not having to worry about logging in and getting sucked in.
It's important to disconnect from that. It's important to spend time in the real world with people that are immediately around you. And I also think that LinkedIn, TikTok, all these are tools for communication, but there's still such an important value in being in the present here and now with other people that are immediately around you.
Absolutely. And my suggestion, just gentle suggestion that has worked for me and a lot of my clients who struggle with social media addiction, for example, is to just set some boundaries for yourself. So for myself, I have found, so I basically say nothing before 8, nothing after 8. In other words, in the morning, as soon as if I get into a social media app, I know that I'm probably going to run late to whatever my first obligation is. So I've just had to go cold turkey. Like I'm only doing it, basically between business hours.
And let's pivot now and actually talk a little bit more about ADHD specifically. So, for those people that have never heard of it, because there's a lot of people right now that are getting diagnosed with ADHD significantly later in life, and they're realizing, oh, this has always been part of me. It's not like anything changed. This has always been part of me. I just didn't know what to call it before. But for those people that are viewing this and learning about ADHD for the first time, what is it?
So this is such a great topic to go to right after social media because for all of the challenges and, I'll say the dark side of social media that we were just conversing about, there's also some really good things that come from social media. So there's a lot of folks that are on the clinical side of ADHD who are very critical of those of us who may not have a medical degree but are out there creating content around ADHD. So while I agree to some extent, people might have some kind of clickbait kind of videos to try to draw in more likes and views and whatever. What I will say is overall, I think that social media has done more positive than it has done harm because of the fact that it raised the global awareness around ADHD. Now, with that being said, there's still myths that exist and persist, which I am happy to put some of those to rest right now. So let me tell everyone about ADHD because I know that one of the myths that's out there is, well, isn't everyone a little bit ADHD? I hear that quite often. And my response to that, I'll usually laugh a little bit with them and say, hey, I totally understand where you're coming from because sure, some people may forget to forget their keys inside or lose their cell phone for a little while or not remember to go to an appointment or run late to meet up with friends or struggle they procrastinate on something they don't really want to do. Everyone does experience some level of that, but where it crosses the line into an actual clinical diagnosis is when this is pervasive throughout all aspects of life and it happens for more than 6 months at a stretch, and it's been part of someone's life since they were younger. This is not just, "Oh, doesn't everyone feel this way?" No, no, no. I call it fingerprints of ADHD. When I look at the experience, the lived experience of my clients and myself, I've seen how this condition can ravage people's lives. It destroys people's relationships. A lot of my clients have gone through divorces or separations. People struggle a lot financially because they have challenges with impulsivity. So it's not just this cute kind of trendy thing to say, oh, yeah, like, oh, I'm so ADHD. Our brains are actually different physically, structurally than someone who would be considered more, again, air quotes, neurotypical. So our brain structure physically different. We have an underdeveloped frontal cortex, which is the part of our brain where executive function, decision making, prioritization, those kind of things are taking place. And we also have not only less dopamine, but we also have so it's when our dopamine is being released and happening, between neurotransmitter or between neurons, these neurotransmitters, they're literally not they're like I call it wimpy dopamine. We have wimpy dopamine where it's like it's not crossing the chasm, so it doesn't have enough oomph to get across the synapse, or it might even be like drawn back into the first synapse that it came out of. But this is a very real condition, so it impacts us every day, Miles, and I think people don't realize just the gravity of the situation. My son Ethan, who just popped in here, is very into Legos.
Mhm.
So this weekend, he and I were working on some Lego uh, projects, like creating cars and spaceships and stuff like that. Well, he had said to me, "Dad, you need to make a spaceship for you." Well, I had to. My wife was out of town, so I was doing the dad duties. So I was getting everybody to bed, and when I came back down to the table, there was all the Legos. Now, what I should have been doing in that situation is cleaning up all of the dirty dishes, putting away all the shoes and the clothes and the toys. I knew that that's what I that was the smarter thing to do. But instead, I was more enticed by the more dopamine generating activity of, ooh, the novelty of trying to create something new and fun. So Miles, I ended up staying up till 3:40 in the morning creating this like
Wow.
like
Yeah.
I I actually kind of want to go grab it because I am really impressed with it. And I'll show it to you in here in just a minute. Then now I'm tired because I didn't get good sleep. And then as a result of that, also, I mismanaged my time over the weekend. So I had to cut into my workday today to complete some of the things around the house that I had committed to getting done before my wife came back. That kind of thing, like you can apply that scenario to so many people with ADHD, whether that's getting your bills paid or getting things done in your house or following up on a work project, whatever the case may be. There are constantly challenges that we're up against.
I think that there's so many people out there with ADHD in the community that they feel like, why is there nobody else that's like me out here? Which is what I appreciate about your content, that you do let them know that they are seen, that there are other people that are out there that are like them. And I like to remind employers as well as just people in general that just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not a barrier. These things have very real impacts on people's lives. And the best thing that we can do is be empathetic. We'll never truly understand, but what we can do is ask questions and seek to get a better understanding. Speaking of which, I wanted to ask you, I understand that your ADHD has impacted your career a little bit over time too. So could you speak to that a little bit about what your journey's been like?
After graduating college, I was ready to attack the world, ready to get out there. And as you know, Miles, as we've gotten to know each other, I'm a very outgoing person, very genuine, enthusiastic kind of person. So I thought, well, I'm going to do really well, not in an arrogant way, but I was confident that I could bring value as someone in a position of marketing or sales because I just love interacting, getting to know people. So I figured you just toss a product in there, and then I would be able to, make a good living, provide for my family. Well, I now stand before everyone after having a slew of jobs that did not work out well for me. And each time that I sought to get support for my ADHD for the things that were some of my weaker points, each and every time uh, I was turned away. I was declined for getting the formal accommodations that I legally deserve and should have access to. So it really uh, fueled my motivation. Uh, that I like to say, in the dark is where I found my spark
Mm.
for what I do, because those were very dark times for me. Because so many of us with ADHD have been told our entire lives, if you would just apply yourself, you could be so successful. Or if you have so much
Mm.
potential, like why are you being lazy or you're doing it the wrong way again? Why do I always have to remind you? I went through and struggled, and about 10, 11 years in, my wife said, "Hey, I'm really starting to get worried about you because you're just really down." And I'm always very open and transparent about my mental health journey. And it's no surprise that the vast majority of us with ADHD will also have co
Mm.
occurring conditions in the form of many different things. But in my case, it's
Mm.
anxiety and depression. Depression, because we're so down on ourselves for the times when we have either let down others, actual or perceived, or let down ourselves because we have a really hard time keeping those commitments. And then we have the anxiety of, as I move forward, I don't want to do
Mm.
it again. And so I always call it the ADHD bundle pack that you never ordered, but you still receive. And it goes back to your point, Miles, of employers being aware that each person, each employee, each team member, everyone
Mm.
has a story. And a lot of people may be struggling. I mean, the most recent Gallup poll said that it used to be 30% of people were only 30% of people were engaged. Now it's
Mm.
even less. And so the fact that so many of us don't feel like we can bring our full best self to work, that's a problem. So that's what I set out, excuse me, to that's what I set out to really change with the work that I'm doing now, because I struggled even when I would step forward to advocate for myself. It was almost always viewed as an excuse, which is not the case. It's an explanation. Now, with that being said, that doesn't mean that someone like me with ADHD should be treated differently or have less
Mhm.
responsibility. It's just a matter of making these simple switches to help to support what we need. My mom sent me a text over the weekend. As I mentioned earlier, my wife was out of town and she said, "Hey, how are you holding up?" And I said, "Well, I just feel," and she meant like taking care of the kids without my wife here. And I said, "It's frustrating for me because I feel like everything I do just moves in slow motion." Um, and so it's really a great testament to my wife and I working together as a team. So I would say on the home front, that's what's really important. Just like at work, it's important to talk with the people that are within the community, whether that's work or home. And in this case, I'll say my family. If you feel like things are really hard to complete, that's might be some sort of friction there for the way that your brain is wired. So it's important to advocate, to have open conversation. So my wife and I are constantly making little adjustments to try to figure out the best way for me to contribute, because I don't I'm not here thinking, "Oh, I don't have to do this because of ADHD." But we're just figuring out like, okay, here are the things that are much easier for me to work on, and I can take responsibility for doing those. And then in the workplace, same thing. We should absolutely be held to the same standard, but we can just find different paths
Hmm.
to get there. And one example of just a couple very simple accommodations or shifts to make would be like right now I'm wearing noise canceling headphones. And I was telling Miles during the recording here that our three kids just got home and apparently they were fighting about something because there was some yelling, crying, screaming. Parents out there, you know how it goes. But the point is, if I wasn't wearing my noise canceling headphones, it would have been very challenging for me to stay engaged in the conversation. But now let's apply that to the workplace. I can remember the last corporate job I had when they walked me to my workstation. It was on the main walkway for the entire sales floor. There, it was an open office environment with people all around me, and I was about an arm's length away from the printer that was the printer for the
Mm.
entire floor. So anytime anybody printed anything, it was right next to me. So I knew pretty quickly that that was going to be a struggle for me. So it's just a matter of advocating. So I asked to be moved to a different area. I got noise canceling headphones. I got a standing desk to help get some of the physical, you know, restlessness out.
And as we start to wrap up for the day, I want to kind of shift gears because you have really developed a online persona and quite a reputation for helping many job seekers with ADHD. But the newer part of your business is really helping companies be able to leverage their ADHD talent. But could you tell me a little bit more about the coaching side of your business for companies?
The motivation for this, the sort of spark of this new offering came from a conversation. It was inspired by a conversation with one of my mentors who said to me, "Ryan, the work you're doing is great, but I think that you're fishing in the wrong pond." And I said, "Well, what do you mean by that exactly?" And he said, "Well, the work that you do with individuals and groups, which I still offer, one-on-one coaching and group coaching, I love doing those things." He said, "While that is good, what if you could have a bigger impact? You could actually go to the businesses where there's still these myths that persist and these challenges that organizations don't know they have and opportunities they don't realize they're missing. And you could go in and they actually have budget for this kind of stuff." And it turns out he was right. So I'm now going in to speak to organizations, and I have a three-part program. So this is my neuro inclusion program. So that it's educate, equip, and empower. some of your most creative, talented employees are struggling and aren't able to do what they do best because they're being asked to do it in the way everybody else has always done it. Learn
Your
more about
workforce
that.
can be better, and it can be better by being more inclusive and proactively hiring people with disabilities as well as people with ADHD. Ryan, thank you so much for sharing your story, sharing your experience, sharing your career with all the viewers out there. The goal of this show is to let people feel like they are not alone in their journey, and I feel like you hit that nail squarely on the head. So thank you very much for coming on, sharing your story, and I look forward to connecting with you in the future.
Thanks, Miles. And I guess just one last thing I'll say to everyone on that note is please don't give up. Don't give up on yourself, because what took me almost 15 years to realize was that my professional performance did not indicate my worth as a person. So whether it is an invisible condition, physical condition, emotional challenges, just know that there is a place out there where you have a spot and you're not alone. A lot of people are struggling with it, but just know, just keep going and keep connecting with other people like Miles that can help to support us, because together we can do this.